Hello and welcome from my little space here in Vienna. My name is Luise, I'm a literature student and writer, and it's been raining for a few days here in Vienna, so I felt like this is the perfect time to make a book talk video where I tell you all about the books that I recently read or started to read. There are some German and Austrian authors in there as well, so make yourself a hot, cozy beverage and sit down with me while I talk about books. Let's start off with a book by a German author. Her name is Ruth Maria Thomas, and the book in German is called Die schönste Version. As far as my research goes, they are working on an English translation, which would be called The Most Beautiful Version if you translate the title directly. The story is a tough one. It is from the perspective of a young woman. Her name is Jella, and she experiences domestic violence. The interesting thing with this story is that there is not a black and white narrative, so there are many layers to all of the characters. It is a very toxic dynamic between the protagonist and her boyfriend. There was a point where I felt like I'm not sure if I want to continue just because of how intense the topic is. Jella, the protagonist, is struggling with her body image and who she is as a woman and in this society. The story is very cleverly made. You see Jella at first when her boyfriend is violent against her, and then she jumps back in time and we kind of get to know everything that led up to this situation without downplaying what her boyfriend does to her. And like I said, it was pretty hard for me to continue the story just because it made me so sad to see what our society makes a person believe of herself. In this case, we get to see Jella's perspective as a woman who really kind of grows up thinking that it is okay to be abused and these are only minor abuses, and she has to be okay with that. That was pretty hard because the language and the way the story is told is very open and explicit, and the author is not scared to name things and show them in a rather raw way. And I really like her writing style. As a piece of literature, I felt like it's very beautifully made and also quite an important story to tell as well. Moving on to an Austrian author, his name is Köhlmeier. He's one of the most famous contemporary authors here in Austria. He's very important, and I felt like I have to read a little bit more by him for my master exam. I'm not sure if he's going to be included, but you know, it's just good preparation and it will help me either way. So I read the story Das Mädchen mit dem Fingerhut. The English translation is Girl with Thimble. I'm not sure if that's the correct translation. I just googled it and that's what came up, but I think that there is not an official translation of the book as far as I know. Yet another very sad and touching story. Köhlmeier touches on migration and being foreign in a different country, also poverty, and he doesn't tell the story from the perspective of an adult, but from the perspective of a child, which makes this story very, very special. It's not a long book, but you fall into the story and everything that is said is kind of enough to get a sense of what it feels like to have no one to rely on, really, not being able to feed yourself and your loved ones, also being disrooted, if that's the right term in English. In German it would be entwurzelt. Jitza is the protagonist. She's a 6-year-old girl and she doesn't speak German yet. She came to Germany only recently, and her uncle, he doesn't really have a lot of money, so he always brings her to the market where a shopman always gives her food. But one evening her uncle doesn't return and she starts to wander the city. She doesn't know where she is, she doesn't speak the language, she's completely alone. Then she's taken into a foster home and there are 2 other boys who are also migrants, and the 3 of them escape, and then you get the story how they wander through the city trying to stay alive and find food and escape the officials like police and all of that. And getting this story from a child's perspective through her eyes is very brilliant and so difficult to make that it is believable. But I think Köhlmeier does a really good job here. It makes you shiver, it makes you uncomfortable and sad to see that little child trying to survive on her own, basically. And the adults that are in the story, especially the German ones and the officials, are not per se villains. There is no pointing fingers at someone, but you still get a sense of that the system is flawed and something isn't working right, but you are still seeing the story from the child's perspective. Sometimes you get a little bit of an insight from a narrator who knows more than this girl and who is probably a little older, but it's still from those eyes that see that the world is kind of harmful and you need to seek protection. I recently started another book by the same author, Köhlmeier. It is called Das Philosophenschiff, and the English translation would probably be The Philosopher's-Ship. And I'm still reading this, so you will get a full summary of how I liked it, but it's very interesting. It's telling the story of Russian intellectuals who were deported in, I believe, the 1920s by Lenin and were sent into exile. And yeah, there is a fictional character telling the story to the author and he's writing it down. It's a large book, so it will take me some more time to get through it. The books I've mentioned so far have pretty heavy topics, so I want to throw in a book that, I mean, it has heavy topics as well, but it's a fantasy book, and I have mentioned this series quite a few times. You might recognize it. It is the second book by Robin Hobb, The Mad Ship. It's in the trilogy of this, what's it called? The Trader. I can't remember the name of the series. The Trader series. Traders. And this is the second book. I don't remember if I gave you the review of the second book. Maybe I have already done this, so you have to see it again. But I'll keep it short and brief because I definitely talked about the first book already, The Ship of Magic. And there is a third book waiting for me to read it, Ship of Destiny. And without promising too much, and without having finished the series completely, I would say this is one of the best fantasy series that I've ever read. It is brilliantly made. The writing style is phenomenal. The storytelling, the character building, the world building, it all works so well together. It's such a harmony and it's exciting. It's slow paced, but there is still happening enough, and you get to see a lot of characters that are very controversial and annoying, but you still want to know their fate and how their story continues in a way. And it's about piracy and seafaring, and there is this beautiful hidden city in this book that is covered under the earth, and it's this whole magical world that they are trying to discover. And what I also really love about it is that the characters that you grow fond of, they are not perfect. Especially there is this one character that is one of my favorites. Her name is Althea, and I love her romance, by the way, but it's not a romance book, so it's not like occupying the whole plot, so it's just a part of the story, and it's very beautifully made. And her character is pretty cool, but she also has her moments where I'm like, what are you doing? And where she doesn't make the best decisions. This makes the characters feel very multi-layered and also relatable in a way. Yeah, check it out if this is your vibe. I can go on and on about it because I think it's a really, really fantastic fantasy world. Another book with a very heavy topic is A Tale of Love and Darkness by Amos. And I read this for a book club, and I think I probably wouldn't have stumbled over it otherwise. As far as I know, it's autobiographic. I have some notes here because it's been a while since I read it. I don't remember all of it. I'm going to read you some of the blurb. Amos Oz' remarkable moving story takes us on a seductive journey through his childhood and adolescence along Jerusalem's war-torn streets in the 1940s and 50s, and into a small apartment crowded with books in 12 languages and relatives speaking nearly as many. Caught between them is one small boy with the weight of generations on his shoulders. Very beautiful story. The only thing that I felt wasn't that great was the ending. I felt like it was suddenly over. I can't really say what I was expecting, but for me it wasn't over yet, if that makes sense. Sometimes I also wanted it to dive a little deeper into emotions and not only have this kind of bird's eye perspective. There was something that kept me a little distant sometimes. I don't know how to explain it better, but it's a special story with many elements and historical backgrounds that are very important and interesting. Okay, before my camera dies, because I'm having some technical difficulties again, I need to invest into a proper camera. But anyways, there is one last book that I wanted to mention. I'm still reading it, so I'm not completely done, but I feel like it's an interesting read. It's also with my master exam in the back of my mind. It's called Die Schuldlosen by Hermann Broch, and he's an Austrian author who is also quite famous. It talks about the collective fault or guilt, I'm not sure which term is better in this case, kollektive Schuld in German, of the country Germany between 1913 and 1933. And the author had to go into exile during the Second World War because he was Jewish. And it talks about the moral decay that was already happening before and leading up to the Nazi regime. It is told in several episodes. Some of them are also more like a poem, and I'm quite torn of how I like the story. There are some passages where I feel like, wow, the language is so beautiful, playing with metaphors, but really taking you in, and then there are passages where I'm like, I have no clue what is going on. How am I supposed to understand this? But I'm still at the beginning, so we'll see how it continues and if it makes a little bit more sense when you continue reading it. Okay, those were just a few books that have been on my mind, and I would love to hear if you know any of these stories or what you are currently reading, and also if you are interested in German and Austrian literature, because it's obviously something I mention quite often. I wanted to thank you all for being here, for watching my videos. I hope this little community can grow, and it would help the channel quite a lot if you engage with it. This is something all the content creators keep saying, but if you are enjoying what you are seeing, you can do so much with just a little click, you know, just liking it or writing a little comment or following the channel or whatever, you know how it works. So thank you all for being here, for listening to me rambling about books and literature. Thank you, and it is time to finish my tea. I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy the rainy days, and a little side note, if you have a spare coin, you can also support me financially over on my Ko-fi account. It is linked down below. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.